Joko Anwar is back, y'all. Hey there, creepy peeps. My name is Nightmare Maven. Welcome back to my channel. I just want to talk about for a second how it feels like every few years, Joko Anwar just kind of like pops up with a new horror movie that takes the internet by storm, at least for a couple days, and then just kind of fades back to make more horror movies. Respect. He definitely pleasantly surprised so many of us in 2017 with Satan's Slaves, which was a loose remake of an 80s Indonesian horror movie, I think of the same name. But now we're back with the same family in Satan's Slaves Communion. Having escaped their isolated rural home, Rini and her family are now living in a dingy, old, crowded apartment building when a big storm hits, making everyone stranded, while the ghosts from Rini and her family's past come back in full force. I have to say, I loved the bigger scale of this movie compared to the first film. The isolated, woodsy setting, like right next to the cemetery, was definitely creepy. I felt like this sequel was kind of like an answer to that. Like Anwar is saying, you're not safe anywhere. There's no safety in numbers, not when it comes to this cult. But a bigger scale does mean more characters, many of whom are simply part of the body count. Unfortunately, we don't get to see too many of them developed pretty well, which, given the almost 2-hour runtime, was a little bit disappointing. The best thing about this newer, bigger setting was the production design. The apartment just screamed death trap. Dodgy elevator that is being consistently packed past capacity, the dim lighting and dingy walls, the super scary dark trash chutes. And I love that Anwar didn't start the film here. We follow Rini as she is making her way back home from work. So there's a hopefulness that the family is still doing well after the events of the first film. And as Rini gets back to the apartment and we're introduced to the apartment, it's kind of just like this feeling of like, oh no. It's super effective. I do feel like the setup was really well done. There's some great tension building leading up to the storm, like, which we can tell already at the beginning of the movie is going to be like the main event where everything's going to be happening. But it kicks off with this devastating accident in the apartment building, and I gotta say the tension leading up to that was like, it just got my heart beating faster and faster, and I knew something was gonna happen and I couldn't tell what, and then it finally does. I won't spoil it for you. All I'll say is it leaves many residents of the apartment with dead family members wrapped in the burial shrouds in their living rooms, because nobody can come get the bodies for a proper burial yet because the storm hits right after. And as you can imagine, the power goes out. So now we're like in this huge apartment with no lights and tons of dead bodies. Super scary. Super scary. I do have to mention though, the first half of the movie really doesn't seem to have much to do with the cult from the previous film. So I was left kind of wondering like if we were just going to take another direction and maybe just this poor family can't get a break and the apartment has something else going on with it. So I was left a little bit confused if the cult was going to be involved at all. Turns out they are, but it was more in the form of like an info dump that happens in the last like third of the movie. It was a lot. Like right at the end. There is a scene towards the end that kind of like, along with this like info dump, just felt really exhausting. There's a very long scene with a strobe effect. I say with a, like, it just felt longer because of the strobing lights. So for any of my photosensitive peeps, just be wary of that. But even I felt overwhelmed with the lights and then like the overload of information we just got, and it like I was almost exhausted. Don't know if that was the desired effect, but I didn't really enjoy it. But Anwar's camera work was once again the star of the show. I feel like it really shined in the first movie also. It's kind of low-hanging fruit, but it's effective in its own right, so I gotta give props to it. In both movies, the camera work contributed significantly to like my soul leaving my body for a couple of seconds. A lot of camera pans that feel like a head swinging back and forth, and a lot of close-ups on characters' faces so that something terrifying can slowly be revealed over their shoulder. It's simple, but it works. Because I can't help comparing this to the first movie, I feel like this sequel was missing a little bit of the dread from the first one. This sequel felt like a lot more of a jump scare fest than the other. But I didn't mind the jump scare so much in the first one because I feel like there was a balance to it. The second one just felt like pedal to the metal, we're throwing everything at the wall, lots of musical stings, jump scares, that sort of thing. even though I didn't like that as much, it did feel like Anwar was having a lot of fun with this movie. There's a lot of nods to horror movies that we all know and love. And despite the small gripes I have with the movie, the fun was palpable. Just kind of felt like, hey, maybe he had a little bit more of a budget with this one and he decided to use it just to have fun. And I can appreciate that. Overall, I still think the first movie is the superior film, but this one was a lot of fun too. I think if you go into this movie expecting that, you're gonna have a good time. This would also make a really good group watch also. And you might need the extra brain power to kind of decipher the lore behind everything, because I feel like this movie left me with even more questions than the first one. I'm kind of hoping there's a third one that's just gonna be like some sort of mockumentary about the cult or something, so that I can get all my questions finally answered. That's it for this video. If you've seen Satan's Slaves Communion, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And if you've seen the first one, let me know how it compares for you as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new here. Become a Creepy Peep today. I will see you very soon with a new video. Until then, stay strange. Bye.